I'm going to do is what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get started. So let me start off by kind of introducing myself. My name is Ken Flowers. I am the Dean of Career Workforce Education at Lake Michigan College. The backdrop of establishing this roundtable group is I'm also on the Trends. I chair the Trends Conference Planning Committee. And so one of the conversations while we were in the planning committee was talking about roundtables and how valuable of a resource they were to faculty and staff and individuals. And so what we decided to do is Curtis LaHaye at Macomb says, hey, I don't want to wait until we decide to put on this conference. Let's just have these now. And so our faculty and staff can kind of communicate what they're doing, what they've done to kind of combat the pandemic, and kind of move forward with this. So really, I'm nothing more than, I can speak a little bit about what Lake Michigan College does, but I'm not a faculty member. It hasn't impacted me in the classroom, so to speak, is it has or would obviously faculty. So we're looking to hear those different things, kind of what you've done, what you're looking at. And some individuals said, hey, there are things that I won't go back to. And so we'd kind of like to hear those things too. So before we get started, what I'd like to do is kind of quickly kind of go around the room and have you introduce yourself, kind of let me know what you're doing, and then just kind of we'll go from there. So I'm going to start with Scott.
Good morning. My name is Scott Derisher. I work for Lansing Community College. I am the lead faculty for the construction management and building construction programs there. I've been in this full-time position now for 2.5 years. Prior to that, I was adjunct faculty for them. So I've been with LCC for about, I think, going on 10 years now. So either in adjunct or as full-time.
Well, thanks. Well, welcome, Scott. Thanks for coming. John Tinker.
My name's John Tinker. I'm the head of the construction trades department at Southwestern Michigan College. I took over for Larry Wilson, who retired this last semester. This is my first semester teaching. I've got 23 years split between residential and commercial construction. And it's been an interesting semester.
Certainly. Yeah. Harvey.
Hi, Harvey Schneider. I'm the skilled trades manager for Delta College. And in that role, I handle all the apprenticeships and contacts with area employers. And we have some apprentices in our HVACR program. So, and I see Mr. Niemeyer, I forwarded this invitation to him. Bob Niemeyer is our full-time faculty member. And we have several adjuncts that teach in the HVACR. But I see they're not on here today, so I'll be taking some notes and letting him know what he missed.
Fantastic. Thank you. Tanisha.
Hi, I'm Tanisha McGee. I work in the instructional office at Wayne County Community College District, and I'm here to learn and see what you guys are doing with our HVAC, with your HVAC programs. One of our HVAC adjunct faculty members should be joining and sharing what he had to do with his courses this semester.
Okay, great. Thank you. Rob.
Hey, my name's Rob Spohr. I am the academic vice president at Montcalm Community College. And I used to, prior to coming into education in 2004, I was a project manager and estimator for a commercial construction company and a residential construction company. So I've done this, but the reason I'm here is we are talking about launching actually we're in the process of launching construction, HVAC and electrical programs because they are needed. We shut down our construction program around 2009, 2010. It was a residential program and we had no enrollment in it. It was down to 2 or 3 people. So, you know, we're working now to figure out what the new program looks like. And that's why I'm sort of just listening in to find out what you're doing, successes you're having, stuff like that.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, I will tell you that just so you're aware, what will happen is I am recording this session, just so you're aware of that. And so what I do is once we get done, I will send out the notes with a link to the session, not just to yourself, but others as well. Once I collect everything, I'll send it out to the MODAC group as well so they can share it to their colleagues. Today will be, right now, parallel to this, there's an automotive session going on that Kurt LaHaye's leading out of Macomb. And so what I'll send the notes, and with the notes, I'll highlight, some of the things that you've done in terms of incorporated into your program. So people can, those things will stand out. So, I'm taking notes, and I should have all, everything completed and sent out by early next week for sure. So Scott, tell us a little bit about your program. Tell us what's kind of happened since March. It's impacted us all starting March. So some of the things that you've done to the impact from the pandemic, some of the things that you've done to keep your program going.
So I guess let's start a little bit about the program itself. Like I said, I oversee two different programs here at LCC. The building construction, which is kind of more toward that residential factor. And then our construction management program, which focuses more in the commercial sector. Both of those programs, we offer an associate's degree. With the construction management program, we also offer a certificate of achievement. And then the building construction program, we offer the associates a building construction certificate of achievement and completion. So there's 3 different options there. In the last 2 years, I would say I've seen an increase in participation, increase in students, which has been a great thing. And I think, since I started there, I've definitely seen the uptick. I guess now that we're in this pandemic, I kind of cringe a little bit, hoping that this uptick in students will increase, but we'll see what happens. Last numbers were still very positive. Talking about the 2 different programs, our building construction program and our construction management program overlap a lot. So a lot of the same classes throughout both of them. In fact, I can have students get a dual degree, associate's degree in both programs for 5 extra classes. So 5 more classes and you can have 2 degrees, because that's how much overlap there is between the two different associate's degrees. Our construction management program associate's degree does have a 2+2 with MSU as well as Eastern. We've been working a little bit with Ferris, trying to get something set up there and not quite have as much success. I've also been reaching out to, up in Houghton, way up north. Can't think of the name of the college right now. With an agreement up there as well. So those are, we don't have any transfer agreements with our building construction program, but like I said, it doesn't take a whole lot for somebody to get that construction management with a couple extra classes if they so choose. We have great relationships with a lot of contractors and a lot of different industry within Lansing, which is huge for us. Our advisory board is very strong, and I think that helps a lot with everything that we do. So with that all being said, our building construction program is very, very hands-on. And the biggest problem, obviously, with that and with the pandemic is as soon as we started taking and having to, change everything to online, how do we handle all these labs and the hands-on portions that we had going on? Back in March, when we were paused, we worked really hard to work with the students to try to get them through as quickly as we could. We were able to resume our lab classes or our face-to-face in July of this summer. And with that, we probably had a 50% turnout. So only about 50% of the students actually came back and completed the pause classes from spring. And of course, that wasn't encouraging, but it is what it is, and we had to keep on moving on. In the fall, we were able to do hybrid classes, and we were able to run all of our labs in person. So we were able to bring the students back in person for our labs, and then everything else, all our lectures, tests, and quizzes were all placed online through our course management system. Now, this also is a huge issue, especially with students that we teach. we're hands-on learners. That's why I teach what I teach, and that's why the students take what they take. And so trying to convert a lot of students that are not used to being online, and trying to get them to know that this is just a temporary situation. We got to get through this. This is how it's going to work for now, and so on, has been a big challenge. And I would say either you have students that are really good, or you have students that are really bad, and it's nothing in between. And I think it's just because of that fact that the online atmosphere is totally different than what we're used to. Most of our construction courses are 2/3 lab, 1/3 lecture. And so with that being said, there's a lot that was to be done in labs. The other challenge that we had, we obviously were limited on the number of students that we could bring in. Our average lab class is 15 students. Due to size and space restrictions, I could bring in about half of them at a time. And so we were running labs twice as much as we normally would because I had to bring the students in 2 times. And so that became one of the bigger challenges too. Obviously a little bit extra workload for, faculty. And then, having to bring those in, those students in twice for the same lab was kind of weird too. So, but we got through it. We are actually wrapping up the semester right now. Monday is our last day of the official LCC fall semester. We have been granted an extension for 1 week if we need to wrap up some of our labs to get the students in because of the 3-week shutdown that we just went through. So we are able to do that if needed. For my classes, it looks like we're pretty well set. I think we got through everything we needed to get through. There won't be any need to kind of extend any of that. So I think those are some of the major challenges. Obviously, taking all of my content for the classes and putting them online has been a challenge. So each week, you're constantly trying to update everything, getting it all online. So all your lectures are there. And then do you do, virtual lectures? Do you do just online lectures and hope students look at PowerPoints? That's definitely been challenging. I definitely learned a lot of what I can and can't do. And then I guess some of the frustrations with the virtual world in itself, we have what we call ORTs, which is online real-time classes. And I've had times where nothing just worked. So you'd be scheduled for a class, go on, online real time, and next thing you know, you can't even teach, or you're halfway through whatever you're lecturing and everything shuts down. So challenges like that, obviously, are going to happen, but those are some of the frustrations and challenges that I've definitely come across so far. So it looks like, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Doug.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Did I raise my hand? I didn't mean to.
I thought it highlighted with around your I can't see you, but it kind of highlighted, so it went to you. So I thought you might have had a question.
Here I am sitting outside on the porch enjoying a fine 42-degree Michigan morning. So no, I didn't mean to highlight. I joined a little bit late here. I don't know why I had this on my calendar at 1 o'clock. So I just want to try and get up to speed a little bit. I would certainly echo quite a bit of what Scott said. That's when I joined in. It's been an interesting semester. It's my first experience with some trends. I was turned on to this via Curtis LaHaye. He's an automotive faculty here at Macomb Community College. So it sounded like a good opportunity for me to sit in. But Ken, thank you for saying and recognizing me, but at this point, I just want to listen in, and I certainly will feel free to jump in when I have something I think I can share. So thank you all for putting this on, and looking forward to gaining some insight here.
Sure,
Thanks.
sure. So Scott, one of the things you mentioned was, learning some things you can do and can't do. Can you elaborate on maybe some of that? And then how you, what methods did you use to put your content online?
So our major method for content online is our course management system, which we use Desire to Learn, or D2L. And pretty much what I did was a lot of, the PowerPoints that I normally would lecture on. I kind of handled it a couple different ways. For some classes, I would just put those PowerPoints online and the students would review them. And there would be a quiz or, some questions or whatever out textbook that they had to answer. Other ones I actually did videos on. And of course, videos take a lot of extra time, obviously. And then with what Lansing Community College has set up, we have different platforms that we have to use for our video recordings. And so just becoming familiar with some of those things and how they operate. Obviously, there's some training sessions and stuff that, I went through to try to get the, better feel for how to get through these. And then, just the challenges of getting that set up, the challenges of hoping that after you did the entire lecture, that once you hit the play button, it actually recorded what it was supposed to record, which, so that was definitely some of the challenges. I guess that's kind of where I was getting at as far as, some of the stuff, was challenging. Some of it was okay. I had a couple online courses prior to this, but they were just regular online classes. The students did what they did when they did it. I posted it at a certain time of the week. They did their work and graded it, so on and so forth. Very little student interaction. And then when we started getting into this online real-time stuff, it became a little bit more challenging to make, like I said, to make sure that everything came up when it was supposed to come up. The other challenge that we have is obviously students aren't necessarily turning cameras on. You can see the names and everything else, and we can't require them to turn their cameras on. And so whether or not they're there and actually participating has always been, one of the questions. So it's another one of those challenges. How do you overcome that? How do you make sure that, they're actually there and participating in that? So.
Sure. One of the things too is I've had the pleasure, of sitting through multiple roundtables now, and some of the neat things I've heard in listening to you, Scott. I think I shortchanged a lot of us by making some of these program specific, because all of the lab folks are doing a lot of the same things. Mm-hmm. And so it would have been beneficial for you guys to hear. And Harvey actually is sitting through the same amount that I've sat through too. So he could probably tell you some of the things in terms of, gosh, we have had faculty buy GoPros and walk around their labs and shoot short videos on specific how-to things. Had a really neat concept. A machine shop instructor said, hey, I'm going to create videos, put a QR code on the machine. The student can walk up to the machine and hit that QR code with their phone, and the video comes up on some how-to things. And so those are some pretty great opportunities that I think other schools are doing. You talked about using PowerPoint. And a lot of the faculty were talking about, well, I do voiceovers on my PowerPoint so the students can connect to me. And so they feel like I'm there. There was faculty that took document cameras out into their shop and stood next to it while they were taking a video of the machine and then talking through the process while it's videoing. And then when the student is out in the shop watching that video, it's like the instructor standing next to them. And so there's been some pretty neat opportunities. I'll share, it just occurred to me is what I need to do is share the minutes to all the meetings to everyone. That way you can get a sense on, kind of get some notes, because I tried to highlight it, but what you're able to do is if there's some part of the notes that, hey, okay, he's talked about software. I've also got contact information on how to reach out to that person to say, hey, you're using D2L2 or you're using Canvas, you created some videos. And so all of these individuals, and that's the whole purpose of us getting together, so we can connect with our colleagues and resources across the state. So are there any questions for Scott specifically?
I guess, my question would be if everybody could just, as you talk, how's your enrollment in your programs? What are you seeing? Job prospects, things like that. Yeah, that's kind of like a breakdown. So I know I probably should have flashed the agenda. So if we kind of talk about curriculum and technology, however you want to break it down. Scott, you've already talked about enrollment. So maybe kind of reflect on that a little bit. Is how are you guys recruiting? Just as it word of mouth, what's allowing your enrollment to
to peak, because I'm in the same boat as Rob. We tried a program that, from a grant funded program in the early 2000s, and really just didn't get out of the gate.
So we see a very big uptick. The number one, employment's huge right now, right? No, I mean, every contractor out there is just screaming for help. And one of the cool things that we kind of started doing, and I want to get more of, is more apprenticeships within the programs. And you don't hear a lot of that in construction. Construction guys, I come out of industry. I owned a residential building company for, I believe, 23 years or something like that. And apprenticeships was just unheard of. You didn't get apprentices. And we're starting now to get some of the contractors and some of the industry to realize the value within those apprenticeships, and just the understanding that, hey, I can, grab a student and put them through school with a commitment, to be working, for a certain amount of time. The very first apprenticeship that we set up with was with a company out of Lansing. They do mainly commercial construction, Laux Construction. And they did a really cool thing. And they actually went into the high school and they did a recruitment into high school. And then they did a huge signing ceremony, just like you would do for the sports teams. And they found a student right out of high school that they wanted to get into their apprenticeship through LCC and through their company. And we did the TV crews were there and everything. And they did the signing ceremony with the student. We gave them hard hats to put on, and jerseys and everything else. So it was, it was a really cool situation. And then from there, it's just been growing. And I think the word's getting out. That's definitely been very helpful. The apprenticeships, getting that more out there. The other thing that I'm really glad that I did, and prior or when I first got in, is we joined the Home Builders Association. And that one right there was huge, because none of these contractors even knew that we existed. They didn't even know that we had a building program at LCCs. They didn't even know that we had a lab. They didn't even know what anything looked like or what these students were doing. And so we joined the Home Builders Association, the Greater Lansing Home Builders Association. And then we started holding some of the meetings out at LCC. And so these contractors are coming out, they're checking out what we got going on. And that's been a huge promotion there on the residential side. Some quick numbers right now. I think we're sitting at about, I want to say right around 60 students in our building construction, and right around 75, maybe 80 in our construction management. And that's an all-time high of it right now. I mean, this is the highest I've seen it since I've been here, as far as enrollment goes within our programs. And so that's a lot of it. The other big thing that we're doing right now is we're working on accreditation for our construction management program. And our accreditation we're working on is through the American Council for Construction Education, the ACCE. And MSU's already got that accreditation. And so that'll just help tie things together a little bit more with our transfer agreements with them. And I will say MSU does a lot of promotion for us too, where students are getting that out there, where they're realizing, the value of coming to LCC for 2 years, the money that they can save, and then taking, moving over there, transferring over there for the next 2 years for their undergrad. So those have definitely helped a lot. And then the other big thing I see is just the excitement within the students within the program. Students talk, and I think a lot of the students are talking about our construction management program, about our building construction program, and then that's increasing our enrollment as well. We do have, people out there that are doing recruiting, and people that are out there that are making videos on programs and so on and so forth, and they're definitely helping us with our promotion. But I think really the excitement within the students is what really sets everything off, and then word of mouth gets out with those students, and everything just goes from there. So.
Scott, do most of your students work while they're in the program, work in the construction field?
Yes, I would say 75% of them are working full time, and then the rest of them maybe full time students only. We're seeing a little bit of an increase, a little more increase of them right out of high school, where in the past it's been more of that working people. And one of the things that we do to accommodate that obviously is evening classes. Most of our classes are offered from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 10 o'clock at night. So our lab classes usually run 3 to 6. I got a codes class coming up next semester that runs from 6 to 9. And, right now we're doing a drafting class that runs 6 to 10. So we accommodate those people that are working, full time, either in the trades or, elsewhere.
So I know previously, from being in construction and then having our program, that, when it came to the guys working in the field, the people working in the field actually doing the construction, there wasn't, like, the construction companies basically, you're going to start as a laborer, you're going to sweep, and then we'll teach you little by little. Has that changed where they want them already with the skills and they're hiring them?
Yeah, I can attest to that because we recently had, well, I can name one of them right off the top of my head. His name, Tommy. He graduated this past spring during the pandemic, instantly had a job. They threw him in as a project manager for a large, mainly residential construction. Threw him in as a PM, but of course, when they threw him in as a PM, they had him out in the field working for a little bit so you can kind of get a handle on things.
Yep.
I talked to him probably about 3 months ago, and he says, I'm full-time project manager right now. I'm overseeing 20 jobs. He says, the value that I got out of the program, out of, the construction management degree, the building construction degree, he says, is gotten me to where I'm at now. And I do see contractors starting to realize that potential, get them through these trainings or through the courses, and the value of that is definitely increasing, the starting positions of many of the students. So.
Well, great. Thanks so much, Scott. Any other questions for Scott before we move on? Okay, thanks so much, Scott.
Yeah, no problem.
Mr. Tinker, tell us about your John, tell us about your program and what you've done.
Well, I haven't done much of anything as far as changing a program or anything here yet. Our program is the full title on it is Construction Trades Green Technology, and a lot of that is pushed in the direction of you can either get a standalone associate's, which has practical applications in it, as well as the business management side and CAD and project planning and management and stuff like that. And you can get into the field with that, or you can take a couple different classes in addition to what we have in the program, and then move on to Ferris. I don't believe we have an official articulation agreement with them, but a lot of it will go in that direction. I have a couple of students that are headed up that way. In the commercial construction field that I came out of, a lot of the project managers are actually graduates from Ferris. I worked with a lot of guys from CSM, and they all had degrees, 4-year degrees from Ferris. Yeah, we're pretty evenly balanced between theory and lab work. This fall semester, the college had been keeping a pretty close watch on how things were developing with COVID, and we kind of got an early start at trying to get all of our lab work in. Dr. Joe had set it up so that we were actually going to finish up our in-person classes on November 18th. I think that was 3 days. I think the governor shut us down 3 days before that, something like that. So I had actually front loaded a lot of the lab while I could get my kids into that. I have a number of dual enrolled high schoolers, and then a lot of younger students. I only have one drinking age student in all of my classes. I have 30 students in the program. So we're dealing with a lot of younger. So all of our program runs during the day. I don't have any night classes or anything like that. So like in my Cons 114, which is intermediate construction practices that actually meets for 10 hours a week. So I was fortunate in that we could front load all of that lab work and then swing around the backside, which is what we've been doing for the last couple of weeks, and cover it more in depth in the theory of it. Like, hey, you know, when we did this in person, this is, you know, theory behind it, how to figure it out. I mean, it's a little backwards, but it left us in a position where we didn't have to try to translate that through a camera or give a bunch of incompletes or something crazy like that. So that was fortunate. I found that I don't like asynchronous courses, that I don't bother to record anything. If we're going to meet during our normal class period. I set up a Google Meet. That's been pretty bulletproof. I set up a schedule with the students ahead of us going virtual. And so far, I've only have 1 or 2 students that are MIA. I don't get a lot of students on camera either, and we can't require them, like you said. But I found that if I just put a short quiz in at the end of that lecture, that even though I may not be able to see them, I don't know, you know, doing the dishes, picking their nose, playing a video game, I can tell who was paying attention by what they get on that quiz at the end of things. And they're fully aware that it's there. So it's gone pretty well. I agree with Scott that we're hands-on people. This doesn't translate well to the internet. It's temporary, and we're going to go back to normal on the other side. I mean, learning a few new things about our learning management system. We use Moodle here. Has been nice, and I'll probably apply a few of those things in the future. But unless the students are planning on being a project manager and sitting behind a desk, they're going to be in the field and they're going to be hands-on. So that's what I'm going to swing back around to on the other side of all of this COVID craziness.
Well, speaking of that, John, and Scott, I don't know if I asked you this question too, and certainly by all means weigh in. What are there things that you probably won't go back to? Is this kind of, is some of this happening? You've looked at how you manage things, how you organize things. It's like, you know what, I like this. I'm not going to go back to this style.
No. We're in person.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I think I'll chime in with that same reaction. I don't think I'll adopt any of this.
Yeah.
I would just soon be back to the way it was. You know, one of the other struggles that you're finding is I have one class. It's a CAD drafting class, and we do 1 week lecture, real-time online lecture, and then the next week is our lab week. And because it's only one night a week, we had students coming into lab that, you know, pretty much forgot everything I lectured about. So you're just double lecturing in lab anyway. So, you know, going back to the way it was is definitely makes more sense. I feel like, and I hate to say it, but I feel like we are shortchanging students with a lot of the stuff that we're doing just to try to get by. But understanding that it is a temporary situation, you know, that we're going through, but I just don't feel like the students are getting what they would normally get on, you know, when things were normal. So, and that's one of my struggles that I'm having is how can I improve on that? So
Sure. I know from an overall putting content online, I think what a lot of you've done that you don't realize, you've expanded access, you know, so you can always have students go back and say, hey, you missed this lecture. Hey, you can review this. And the beauty of it is they can review it at their leisure whenever they can. And that's kind of what's been nice that I've seen from a lot of this. So any questions for John? Okay. Doug, let's talk about what you're doing at Macomb.
Well, we have gone to the hybrid format for this past semester. So certainly our quote unquote lectures, if you will, have all been online. And during the times we were supposed to meet on ground, had the same situation that Scott had, where if we had 14 students in a class, we were limited to 9 students and the instructor being the 10th. So if we had 14 students, we'd meet with 7 one week and 7 the next week. They say there's a silver lining to everything. And what I did find, typically our classes would meet, majority of them are in the evenings. It's an HVAC trade. And as we all know, the demand in skilled trades is very high. So the majority of our student population is working in the field, and they are only available to come in the evenings. Our courses typically meet for 16 weeks for 4 hours once a week. Historically, when we've been on ground, it's been 2 hours of class discussion and 2 hours of hands-on. With moving to a hybrid format this semester, and then meeting with the students every other week. And I would agree with Scott, it certainly has created some more work for us as faculty to have to double down on the lab time. But with a straight 4 hour of lab time, I think the students got a little bit more out of things this semester. Instead of it being just 2 hours, you could be more engaged over a 4 hour hands-on lab session, at least with the students and a smaller group. I think some actually got more out of their education this semester than they have in the past, because now you're not dealing with 22 students in an on-ground lab. You're dealing with a smaller group, and we all know that smaller groups that they're going to get more out of things. With respect to the hybrid format and having the lectures and assignments all online, mixed reviews from the students. Some actually loved it because they were able to go back and review the material. When you're on ground, a student's on ground, they get one shot of getting all the information from your PowerPoint, your presentation, your lectures, where when they're online and you voice over the PowerPoints, we use a product called TechSmith at Macomb. It's been a great screen sharing thing. You're not just restricted to a PowerPoint. You can pull up different screenshots, whether it be a page from a textbook, and voice over this. Some of the students did say that they really enjoyed being able to go over the presentations twice. With us being hands-on, certainly some did not care for that. So that's kind of what we've been doing at Macomb. I think some of this, I think we're going to move forward and continue to use our LMS. We use Canvas at Macomb. Some of the content's already built, so if a student does want to go back over and review things, they can. So I think there's been some benefits. That's what we've been doing. I don't know if that directly answers your question, Ken, but
Yeah, it's covering what you're doing. Doug, would you mind kind of expanding out when you say you guys did things hybrid? Kind of expand on how did your hybrid work?
I guess that depends on what student you would talk to.
Not necessarily from a student perspective.
No, I understand the gist of your question, Ken. I have done both synchronous and asynchronous deliveries this semester. Sometimes if the topic warranted, we would have a Zoom meeting when we were regularly scheduled to meet. And I would review the students beforehand if it wasn't a hybrid format. Do you really feel we need to have a Zoom meeting tomorrow, or are you comfortable with the content? Things of that nature. So sometimes we call it remote learning if we did it synchronously. And in fact, Macomb for next semester has implemented a new category for what we're all going through here. Some can be hybrid, where it can be synchronous or asynchronous. And then we certainly have virtual, where everything's completely online. your office hours would be conducted virtually to help those students if they needed it for a completely online course. But they added something called remote teaching this semester, where each lecture would be delivered during its regularly scheduled time, and that would be done synchronously. So if it's hybrid, it's been a little synchronous and asynchronous. If it's virtual, it's been completely online unless some students need extra help. And then the remote category, which some courses have opted for, I did not. We stuck with hybrid. I didn't want to shoehorn all the adjunct faculty and myself into having to meet online if there wasn't a need to. But with the hybrid format, we have that option. So does that answer that, Ken?
Yes, sir. It sure does. It sure does. What about enrollment? How's your enrollment looking?
You know what? Not too shabby, to be honest. Surprisingly. There are some other skilled trades areas at the college where there's been a decline. Certainly we're down a little bit in numbers, but we have not had to cancel many courses. In fact, we have some right now. We've maxed out at 18 students for the aforementioned reasons that we can only have 9 on ground at a time. So fortunately, our administration has capped class sizes at 18. Typically, we can get up to 22. But some of these courses that are the introductory courses, we've got 14 in our climate control program, and we have some of them waitlisted right now. So we may need to even open up other sections. One concerning thing, one interesting thing about the enrollment is that some of the students who took the introductory courses this semester, and they loaded up, probably too much if they're working full time, they found out that online teaching can be challenging, or learning it's a different way to learn. So when they would move on from our introductory to our intermediate level courses, I'm noticing a little bit of decline in enrollment, where a student might not be taking 4 courses now, that they're just taking 2. But I would say overall in our program, our enrollment's looking pretty good. And let me see if oh no, I don't have my camera, but you can't see me knocking on my head to knock on wood. We're kind of holding our own, Ken.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much, Doug. Any questions for Doug?
Just a comment there. I think that the full online asynchronous suffers from a perception problem. We're doing training here right now, QM training, Quality Matters, to help out with our online work. And the thing I've noticed about it is, since you don't have an actual lecture, everything that would be in your lecture seems like homework. And then you have your homework on top of that. So when you get into a module, it actually feels like, because your lecture and your homework are tied together, that it's this really long, drawn out thing. And a lot of people I've been talking to have been surprised by that. And it does take some getting used to. You have to try to separate that in your head so that you don't feel like it's just this endless slog through material.
No,
I've heard some of that from the students, actually, that they think the perception from some of the students has been exactly what you just mentioned, that, geez, I come in and I have to listen to the lecture and go through whatever content you might have in your particular module. And that's homework. And then they're doing the actual homework on top of it, where, yeah, the perception is that, oh my gosh, some are having a difficult time differentiating that, hey, normally we'd be on ground for 2 hours to get this lecture, and then here's the homework. They are lumping it into the same thing. So interesting you mentioned that. I would like to know if you have any strategies that you've used to, and I'm familiar with the QM, that you've been able to implement to help the students differentiate between the two.
Well, my best strategy has been to actually still hold some class during class time and do it as a lecture, have that face-to-face time. At that point, they don't equate the time that they're engaging in class because they're listening, which is rather passive, and they don't have to do that reading or interact fully with what's going on. And I'm not saying they're getting less out of it that way. I'm just saying the perception's different, and I see that they do better when they still get that face time and then they get their homework versus all of it coming to them via text or, you know, a little bit of video, but just mostly interactive text stuff. And then that just all feels like homework. Cause I've got the same thing, you know, if they're in the classroom for 2.5 hours, we've got a short break in the middle of it. And then they, you know, go home 6 hours later, they do an hour or two of homework. That feels very different than if you're like, okay, now you have 5 hours of total content. Here you go. I can just hear them gagging and strangling themselves.
No, I appreciate that insight. Yeah, something definitely to ponder and chew on. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, in other groups, we've had them talk about the same thing, that they're especially with, you know, connection to the lab, the students like to interact with the faculty. You know, it's not just in our lab classes, all of our classes. We've forced areas to where it's like, hey, you need to have a minimum amount of engagement time with the students, you know, through synchronous connections, through open lab, through open office hours, things like that. So we did have a couple of extra people join us. So I'd like for them to introduce themselves. And so I see, let's see, gentlemen, now it's Z981. I'm sure that's not your name. So,
my name is Kerry Coates, Professor Coates.
Professor Coates, it was nice to meet you. So Professor Coates, we are talking about the impact of COVID and what it's done to our programs. And then also let me have, before we get to you, Mr. Coates, let me have Suzanne Miller, I see, is on the call.
Yes, I am. Sorry, I had to join late. I had another Zoom meeting going for quite a while there. So I'm the program coordinator up at Ferris State University and end up getting students actually from a lot of you guys here. So.
Well, that's great. So thank you both for joining. So Professor Coates, I'm going to go to you. What have you done at Wayne to help to some of the changes that you've had to make, and how have you incorporated these changes in your curriculum and your work for students?
Well, first off, I'm still adding things, trying to do new things, because in my discipline, which I'm at Wayne County Community College, by the way, I teach HVAC. So it's kind of hard doing things where you really need to have hands-on when the students are not there with you, nor do they have access to the equipment that you're trying to explain. That makes it quite difficult. By me being a licensed contractor, I was able to invite a few students to some jobs, but you know, making sure everybody had a mask on and they kept their distance, and I kept it short. I'm still trying to find other avenues to make it easier to do, you know, via Zoom or, you know, just online.
Have you, in terms of working online with your students, have you put curriculum online for them to access? So what at Wayne, what tools do you use to connect with students, like your learning management system? How have you kind of interacted with them online?
Well, I haven't had a whole lot of experience with a lot of the online equipment, and we're still trying to find what's best to work in this discipline. It's kind of rough to try to explain somebody a boiler and all they have is a book in front of them, paperwork, and they really need to be able to put their hands on different things so they have a better understanding. This is a tricock, this is a blowdown, this is a sight glass. You know, you can see a picture, but then you go on a job and say, okay, I just took this loose, what's the next part? And the student looks, well, you know, we didn't see any of this, you know, except for when we were in school and had equipment to work with. So it's kind of difficult, and I'm still trying to find a better way of reaching the students. We actually had shut down pretty much for the summer, but I did have two students for the fall, but they were independent study students. So that gave me a chance to do other things outside of the realm of school and teaching. But I see that they want to move forward this semester, so I'm looking for any ideas that can help me with this discipline.
Okay, what's your enrollment look like?
It looks like we have about 8 students so far that's enrolled for HVA class that have my name on it. But at the same time, enrollment is still open for the spring. We still have a couple more weeks. So I expect the class to get a little larger, but I don't see it being more than 12 or 15 students. And that kind of helps, keep things down to a minimum where I can work one-on-one with students.
That's great. Okay. So yeah, that's one of the things that we're all, so I'll make sure that you get the notes, not only Mr. Coates, for what we've done in this particular curriculum, but what others have done to kind of show off, where they're creating videos in front of equipment and machines. And I actually could have used you this week, as my mom's boiler got air in it. So I had to try to figure out how to get the air out of it. So I could have used you this weekend, because it's still gurgling. So anyway, well, thank you. Any questions for Carrie? All right, great. Suzanne, you want to tell us how Ferris handled what you guys have been doing, again, handling curriculum changes, how you've incorporated new things to help students get through this?
Well, we stayed face to face. That is what Ferris is known for. So that is what we did. And what we did is, I'm going to say, things like my lecture auditorium that can seat 76. Initially, it was reduced down to 18 until we finally got the project managers at school there to be able to take a look at it and realize, okay, we can fit 30 in here now. So, class sizes were reduced down, tables were staggered. Where we hurt the most is actually in our computer related classes, because we went from having a classroom of 18 down to 12, but students were signed up for the class. So it ended up being half would meet on a Tuesday, and the other half met with the instructor on a Thursday, because we still wanted to maintain that face to face. Masks were required in all the class in all of the buildings. But if you were in a lab situation, like in our practices lab, and our soils lab, and our materials lab, our mechanical and our electrical practices labs, you had to wear a face mask as well as a face shield. And that was what was determined by our school of not allied health anymore, is it? Yeah, it's our health professionals, our College of Health Professionals. That was what they had determined was a good way to actually limit exposure. And we actually didn't really experience any issues with cases in the program or anything, and we didn't have any outbreaks. And Ferris's numbers actually stayed relatively low compared to all of the other universities. What we did have the option, though, if faculty wished to go fully online, we did have one faculty member whose health is compromised. He did take his classes fully online, but he's up at the junior senior year, so that wasn't as much of a concern. At the junior senior year, at least they've been in college for a while. They actually know the instructors. They've seen their faces, and they actually saw him for the first 2 weeks of class. He then decided to make that switch. We have all of our classes loaded into the system as being a potential online coursework required if necessary, in the event that we have to flip again. But quite honestly, we prefer to be face to face. It's just, I am having to limit some lectures, or, Ferris has helped us scramble to some night, normally where they could have had like a lecture in our building. Now they're having to, walk across campus to one of the larger facilities. And that's actually made scheduling a nightmare for us, just because I'm fighting for that space with all of the other programs on campus. But, at the end of the day, with the hands-on classes, I want to be hands-on. We did flip, obviously, when the state health department mandated that they shut down all of the universities. And we quickly scrambled. I was throwing plans and specifications at students to take home with them, so they would at least have the hard copies, because some of the stuff you do not learn well looking at a computer screen, especially if the students have a tiny computer screen. That's really difficult. And how many of them have dual monitors? In our computer classes, you really need a dual monitor. You need to be able to watch me on one screen walking you through it and be doing it on the other screen, because that's what you would have been doing in the classroom with us. So, it looks at kind of requiring different things of students. So we are actually, starting in the fall, going to make laptops mandatory for incoming students, because if we have to flip like this again, they've got, last spring, it took us 3 weeks to finally get some kids Wi-Fi access, 3 weeks to get them a laptop. The university had to go out and quickly buy laptops and then ship them out to students. I mean, and that was kind of crazy. And the university also said, well, we're not doing that again. They've been through it. The last spring was unusual. It was an anomaly. People didn't, expect this. But starting in the fall, we knew COVID existed. People had to realize the potential for switching to online is out there. They should have been a little bit more prepared, so at least with us getting it on like the equipment list, the financial aid packages will take into account the fact that we are expecting them to have an additional having a laptop. And I also added a second screen, because they're not going to be effective if they only have the laptop. So that's kind of where we've gone with a lot of this. Our, my faculty like being face to face. We do. I like being face to face. I have a compromised immune system. I just chose to wear my mask every time I was in the building. I mean, I had the option to remove it when I was lecturing. I was not comfortable doing that, so I simply wore my mask the entire time. So, but I talk really loudly and I announce pretty clearly, so I was able to talk through the mask all right.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I think a lot of the labs, obviously we were pushed out in March, but a lot of the labs were able to maintain. I know there is some concern. I haven't asked, we haven't really talked about this yet, but for example, maybe Suzanne, are you preparing to change or start off any differently in the spring for the winter semester?
No, we're right now under the assumption that we'll be able to be face to face again. I'll be honest, we had a program meeting yesterday, and I realized my video wasn't even on. I'm sorry, you're looking at my two dogs. Sorry about that. They're really cute.
They are very nice looking dogs, by the way.
Thank you. They're rescues, actually. So, yeah. The one who teaches like our framing lab and our practices lab said flat out, I can't do practices lab virtually. Okay. We pour concrete, they build formwork, they lay block and brick, they weld. You can't tell a student go out and buy a bunch of concrete and mix it up at your house. You don't even know what their living situation might be, whether it can even allow for that. And that's stuff that, materials and things and the tools, we provide all of that in the lab. Do they even have those tools at home to be able to do something like that? Probably not. So, he said, if we can't go face to face, he said, there's really no point in even holding my classes. I mean, he's so down on it. And he also is the one that I always have to find a larger lecture hall for him, because he wants to do the lecture face to face. And these are our freshman students typically. They could be some of our incoming transfers as well, depending on what their background is. But those students really need that hand holding. The virtual for a freshman, I think, is it's really a disservice to them, because they don't get to engage with their fellow students. All of that natural kind of organic team building and getting to know people in your class, that doesn't happen on the computer. It doesn't. You can set up a little Google chat room or whatever. It is not the same thing as when you're sitting, even if it's 6 feet apart, but you're still sitting next to somebody and you can ask them questions, and things. It doesn't happen. And, I was glad that we were able to make, kind of the working with, using the shields and the masks together as kind of that 2-step process. It really did seem to serve ourselves well. Now, we did have issues with students having to go out on quarantine. I mean, that happened a lot. We'd get a lot of My girlfriend tested positive. My parents tested positive. And so how Ferris actually was able to work with that is they actually had students that would come in and set up a camera in your classroom if you wished. And it would actually live Zoom the recording to the students that were quarantined. And it was some little kind of camera that they would just kind of plunk. It almost looked like an Alexa or something. Kind of plunk it on the desk, you know, right up in the front. And that way I could go between my overhead presentation, but I could be writing on the whiteboard. I could be using the document camera, flashing things up, or even standing up and, you know, pointing things out like in my plan reading class. So that was pretty helpful. They also did bring in, and our one instructor had this, I called it the Sheldon robot. It was like on the Big Bang Theory, if anybody's ever watched that. It looks like an iPad, and it was on the on the wheel thing, and it would move around. Ferris actually had invested in several of those, and so our one instructor had that, and the students relying on it can actually grab control of the camera and move it around so that they can actually see better, and they can interact and ask questions remotely. So that became an option. And other classes were offered as high flex. So like half of the class could be sitting in the classroom, and then the other half was attending via Zoom. And then and then sometimes they would swap, but those were other programs. That wasn't how we proceeded within ours. Once in a while, some people did just a live Zoom from the class if they had kids out on quarantine. Others I know, and like I'll say, I sit in the office next to Eric Fredette, who's the program coordinator for HVAC. Every night at 6, he would hold a special Zoom session for the kids that were out from his class. You know, it just depends, I think, on what you're teaching, whether you're able to make that work. I didn't have enough time in my schedule to be able to do special lectures on top of it, because we lost a faculty member at the end of September who decided to go off and teach in England. And then we lost another one out on FMLA. He had a heart bypass. So I was picking up classes right and left, and faculty were scrambling. I mean, it was just a heck of it was the worst possible semester to be trying to actually make accommodations for the kids that weren't here, the kid that had to be out. You know, we were taking in homework late. I had to be a lot more flexible with stuff, you know, simply because, you know, the kids can't control that they've been exposed to somebody necessarily that had COVID. So
Wow.
that's it. I probably said more than enough. So.
Oh, no, that's great. Well, do we have any questions for Susan?
Yeah, has
Go
your
ahead.
college sent any kind of a delegation to the governor to kind of lean on her a little bit about opening things up to the trades, since nursing and police have carved out their own exemptions? I understand the need for nursing, but coming recently out of industry, we're begging for carpenters. We are running overtime all the time. Overtime is just normal time now because we can't get enough skilled workers. And furthermore, she didn't shut down the construction sites. A lot of the construction sites, I was on a construction site. I was working, doing COVID unit isolation and working on hospitals and stuff like that straight through the shutdown. And anybody working anything deemed necessary for infrastructure was still working. And I think that we still should be teaching in the spring. And I think that, you know, I've said something to my dean, and I think that everyone here should say something to their higher ups and be pushing her ahead of time, so we're not reacting to whatever comes next, but being proactive about it and trying to carve out our own niche, because our students there's some of this that we can't make up, and they can't be set a year behind and then be at a disadvantage going into the job field because they had to do some Rube Goldberg to get their degree.
Well, actually, the latest one that came out, and we're using this because we actually have an industry outreach, ISET, our Institute for Construction, Education, and Training, which actually does all the certifications for all your testing agents on MDOT projects. And without that, without us offering that training, you don't have anybody doing hot mix asphalt control, density testing, you know, all of that. And so they did get shut down in November initially. We're actually working on an exemption for ISET because they are providing an essential service. The road industry has not shut down. MDOT is still bidding projects, and they're all still out there working on it. But what our director of that pointed out was that the latest act or whatever it is that they issued said gatherings at trade schools and career schools are permitted for the purpose of providing technical education services, including manufacturing, industrial technology, trades, and cosmetology, but only to the extent that these activities cannot be completed remotely. And we actually have a meeting with our dean next week to talk with him about that, because I want to push for our entire college to get an exemption. Our welding program, how are you welding at home? I mean, that HVAC's dying, that, they can't do their stuff at home. So to me, our entire college needs an exemption, and we wanted to try to push our dean to kind of make sure that our school president is kind of on board with that. But we consider ourselves critical because our industry is still hiring. Our students are graduating and they have jobs. Heck, I've got kids that are continually bugging us right now. Well, I'm already working, so can I take my exam at a different time? Because exams are scheduled for next week. So that is what we are planning on doing, is actually trying to push that and be proactive so that Ferris won't kind of shut us down again.
You said that, is that what you talked about from the governor? Is that in her latest thing that came out just 2 or 3 days ago?
Yeah, that was the one that
Okay, I
came
wasn't
out
up to
when they did
speed
the
on that.
extension. That was the
Okay.
based on when they did the extension. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely argue that everybody in the trades is essential, because just because you're doing electrical or HVAC or something like that, you might have been doing residential or might have been doing, a department store. Next week, it still applies. You could be in a hospital. You could be building medical equipment. You could be doing all kinds of things. So the basic skills are applicable in all kinds of different jobs.
Yep, no, definitely. I mean, to me, I think all of us would qualify for it'd be more of an essential working there.
Yeah, one of the things we had to fight against from leadership, when it came to lab-based classes was the whole, well, can you do the lecture remotely, front load it, this, that, and the other. And the thing that I explained to them, because I taught in labs for years, like you teach the theory and you walk them to it's interconnected. There isn't like you front load something for 3 or 4 weeks, then they got lab time. It's like, it's all interconnected. You teach them and that's why generally, in our particular school, lecture lab, there's generally 1 hour lecture, 4 hours of lab, so they can connect all of that together. You don't separate it out. So, so we have to battle against that quite a bit from those that have never taught in a lab environment. So, Harvey, do you want to tell us what your school's doing?
Okay, well, I echo many of the things that you're already been said. In the fall, we tried to front load as much lab time with the students. Not that we had a crystal ball, but we all understood that at any time we could get kicked out. And that's basically what happened. So we're actually in pretty good shape for this fall because we were able to get through a lot of the hands-on stuff in our welding, our HVAC, our machining classes that we needed to. We are very concerned going into the winter semester, and we are trying to push back the start date on these classes, but it's the systems we deal with, and I don't know if it's just Delta or if it's all the colleges, you just can't go in and say, I want to change the start date on this class from January 8th to February 3rd. It's just not that easy. You have to create a new section. You have to cancel the existing section. You have to transfer all of the students that are registered into that. And when you start transferring students from a class that they signed up for into a new section that you created with different parameters, maybe a different, obviously a different date that it's going to start, but it might increase the class period by 30 minutes a day or whatever. It is just a mess to do that. That's what we're attempting to do right now with our winter classes. Hopefully we can get through whatever spike the Thanksgiving get-togethers and Christmas get-togethers will cause, and go forward. I agree with everybody here as far as trying to teach some of this stuff online. It's just not meant that way. I'm the skilled trades manager now, so I deal more with apprenticeships, and I got industry wanting to send me apprentices for training, but then they all ask the question, will they actually be hands-on in a lab, or are you just going to have them, reading the book and taking quizzes, doing online stuff? And I wish I had a good way of being able to teach things like HVAC, welding, machining. We're struggling to come up with different ways to be able to teach us online. Yes, there's some good videos out there, but it really doesn't replace a student getting these things on the pieces and parts and seeing how they're connected and how they come apart, and troubleshooting and making things run when they don't. I don't know. I don't have any good answers for you. I am interested though, Susan, you said you're going back face-to-face in the winter semester. So you're starting up right after New Year's?
Yeah, now what Ferris did, and this I don't quite understand why, they've eliminated our spring break, but we were just finishing a week early, which I don't understand why they wouldn't have just pushed our start back by a week to give us a little more leeway there. But they made the determination in the middle of the fall semester, eliminate spring break and start at our usual time. And I don't know if it's because our schedule has always been set that we start for a week and then we either have Labor Day or Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And so you always have a full week of classes, then you miss that first Monday.
Yep.
And I don't know if their thought is, well, we can't start on a Tuesday. I mean, I don't know why. I think people would be able to roll with it, but that seems to be that's our guess as to why they haven't pushed back the start on it. Maybe they will change their minds. I don't know. I wasn't able to attend. We had a town hall yesterday, but I was listening to our 499 capstone presentations at that time. So I don't know what they updated us with.
Yeah.
Maybe that was raised.
Because Delta is trying to push everything back for a late start, the end of January into February, and trying to negotiate and figure out how that affects the rest of the calendar for the school year. But that's the path we've started down right now.
Yeah, as we're talking, I just got a text that we canceled our spring break and we're pushing back a week. So yeah, and that's been going on. So one of the things I want to be mindful of your time. So we've covered a lot of great information, and I will synthesize this in our minutes and notes and get this out to everyone. But one of the things I always like to ask is, we talked about curriculum, we talked about technology, we talked about enrollment. What, as you signed up for today, are there things that you wanted to hear that you haven't heard yet, that you'd have a question about? So Scott, how about yourself? You're all set. Is there anything that you might have more questions on? And again, I'll send out contact information for everyone, so you will have that if something comes to you. But is there anything that you wanted to hear that you didn't?
I don't think so. I really didn't know what to expect coming into this, being one of the first roundtables that, I've kind of taken part in. A lot of valuable information, a lot of thought happening now. And of course, we've all got questions, what's going to happen, where are we going from here? And it's very encouraging to me to hear Suzanne say that they're face-to-face. I think one of our struggles at Lansing Community College is our main campus is a stone throw away from the governor's main residence, or from the Capitol building. So I think they're a little bit more scared, to take that initial step. But I was very encouraged with the latest extension to the order, with us being able to take trades back in and go back, face to face. And hopefully colleges will realize that, this is the importance and start to understand that we have to do this. We got to get these students back face to face. And hopefully when they're planning for the spring semesters or winter semesters, in some cases, that they'll take this into consideration. And like I said, Ferris is very encouraging. I hope that we all follow that, where, you know what, we know we have to do this, and this is the way we teach. So yeah. So other than that, no, I really don't have any further questions, but very valuable information, and I appreciate everybody's time.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Scott. John, what about yourself?
Got to find the mute button.
Sure.
This is actually
I would like to say that.
Oh,
I would like to say that I didn't know what to expect when I tuned into this, but at the same time, my hopes were that I would find some other additional ways in which I can get through to the students online. I realize hands-on is the best way to go. I'd like to know that my students, when they actually enter the workforce, that they know what they're doing, because that reflects not only on me, but on the college. So hands-on is, in the HVAC world, is the best way to go. But I have heard some things since I tuned in, some things that I might be willing to try, that I am going to try next semester, unless they open the buildings back up where we can actually go in and do hands-on. But as far as making some videos and myself, I use YouTube a lot, and I instruct the students to look at different things that's going on YouTube based on what the homework assignment was. But at the same time, I have never tried to really do videos myself and present them to the class as part of the work. So I may try that. And that was an idea that I listened to you talk about, Ken, and I think I'm willing to try. But in the meantime, I would like to be able to not only talk this one time, but be able to get back with some of you guys and pick your brain, and maybe I'm doing something over here that you might like. So hopefully in the future, we'll have a chance to talk again.
well, and that's a great point, Gary. We have a lot of people have said the same thing. They like to connect, and part of the onus for getting us together is a lot of us have never met before, see our colleagues. So there are additional resources. I mean, Suzanne talked about a student came in and brought a phone in to record the conversation. You can do that at a machine. Again, you can use your phone to take a video quickly. Again, what happens is I see a lot of the faculty start worrying about their production value and like, why I need to do this. And then you spend a lot of time because you want it to be good, right? You want to be a good presentation. So thank you for that. John.
This is actually my first roundtable. I've had a lot of firsts this semester, so I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't know what to expect, but it's good to hear. Well, I don't wish our struggles on anyone, but it's good to hear that I'm not alone in my struggles, and to hear some interesting and innovative solutions to try to overcome them. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Harvey.
Yes. No, this roundtable is a great way for us to get together, see one another. And as John just said, we're all in the same boat, even though we can't see each other on opposite sides, and we're all facing the same dilemma. So if anybody comes up with a novel idea or an off the wall way of doing something, I'm always open to hear about it.
Well, that's the great thing about having this connection. So like I said, I'll send out contact information. And the beauty of it is like Suzanne has an HVAC person sitting next to her. She might be able to, bounce ideas off of him to get those to help you. So Rob, how about you? You're starting a program. What kind of things were you looking to hear or see that you may not have?
No, I actually got everything I needed out of this. We've got a lot of data that we're putting together, and this supports it. And also, seeing what's going on at other places and how they're making it through. A lot of what you talked about is what our welding folks are doing, and robotics and things like that, dealing with the same issues. But when it comes to starting the program, it's, I'm glad I heard what I heard, that the businesses are actually hiring and not still in the old model of start you sweeping floors and then you'll move up. So it makes sense actually starting a program.
Well, great. Thank you. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer than we have to. Anything else for the good of the group? Okay, well, expect from me. It'll probably be on Monday. I'll send out some minutes. On the minutes, there'll be us who attended with a video link, a link to the contact information, along with one of the things we're trying to put together is a virtual trends conference. And so I'll send a link. If you have some best practices that you're doing, or you have colleagues are, it's a call for presenters. And so if you're interested in participating, it's planned, scheduled right now to happen in February. And so that might be an opportunity to showcase some of your talent and some of the best practices that either you or your colleagues are doing. So look for that on Monday. And I'll send out the other minutes as well, because they might be helpful to kind of let you know that, to me, what I've really felt and seen, that yes, not every hands-on experience is the same, but a lot of these lab instructors do a lot of things that are very similar to present their material, and you might be able to pick some things up from it. So,
Ken, thank you for putting this together and all your work on this.
Yes.
oh, you bet. Well, you guys have a great weekend, a great holiday, and look forward to seeing you again. I'm going to try to put these together more often because they have been very valuable. So thank you for your time.
I agree. Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Bye.
All right, bye.
Thank you. Bye.